Hello and welcome to this instructional video that will describe the steps for assigning license plates to residential parking permits within the Park Houston Residential Permit app. We are in an account in the app and we are on the Permits tab for this particular customer. This customer has already gone through the application process, got the application approved, and actually has purchased permits through the Park Houston resident app portal. Now we see that the permit year for this particular customer is 2023. And we see on the permit tab that this customer has a total of 6 active permits, each of which is falling under the applicable permit group for that permit. So we see for this customer that there are 2 active resident permits, 2 active visitor permits, and 2 active one-day permits. And anytime a permit is purchased, they will always show up under the Permits tab. So in addition, on this screen, we also see a few filters in the top right portion of the layout. Currently, that first filter is set to all. So what this does is this brings back all active permits, regardless of whether a license plate is linked to the permit or not. So currently we see that there's actually one permit that does not currently have a license plate linked up. Clicking on the assigned filter will bring back all active permits that do have a license plate linked to the permit. And we see there are 5 in that particular status. Clicking on the unassigned filter brings back all active permits that do not have a license plate linked to the permit as of yet. And we see there is one permit in that status. In addition, there is also a checkbox to bring in any permits that are currently in an expired status. So if we click on that, we see that there are an additional 3 one-day permits that are falling within the day pass permit group. So there was actually 5 permits purchased for this group. 2 of them are currently active, and these 3 are expired. So if I were to click on one of these expired permits, the portal would tell me that the permit is currently in an expired status and it cannot be assigned for further use. So let me check out of that. In addition, for each permit group on the far right, we have some collapse arrows. So if you wanted to create more space on your screen, you can just click that collapse arrow and it'll bring the group down. And any remaining open groups will still be on your screen. So the filters and the collapse arrows can come in handy, especially for a customer who has purchased many permits during the permit year and they want to create additional space on the screen to view their permit. So that's a feature that can be helpful for that customer. So in our first example, we're going to assign a license plate to a resident permit. Now, per city code, the vehicle registration address associated with the vehicle must match the resident property address in order to qualify for a resident permit. So this customer, during the application process, submitted copies of vehicle registration for each of these vehicles. Park Houston received that information, reviewed the information, and approved the request. And accordingly, the customer uh, purchase the permits with these plate assignments that were requested. So now uh, the customer wants to change the vehicle license plate associated with the permit. Now these permits are not transferable, meaning you just can't go in and change a license plate. It does require Park Houston to review and confirm that the new license plate, the registration address for the new license plate matches the resident property address. So when assigning a plate to a resident permit, a request needs to be made, and typically there's usually just 2 scenarios for a change request, and that is that the customer has sold the vehicle and has purchased a new one, or the state has required a license plate change for the customer. So typically, those are your 2 most common scenarios of why a plate would need to be updated. So we're going to go and click on permit RPA 000067, and that brings us to the reassignment screen. Now we're going to click on the Add New button because this is a new plate, and we're going to populate the vehicle information in the fields, and I'll go ahead and do that now. And I'm going to upload a copy of the vehicle registration for this request. And once I've completed all the fields and uploaded my copy of the vehicle registration, I'll go ahead and click on the submit button. We now see that the account has been updated, that the request has been submitted and is currently under review by Park Houston. In addition, we also see this permit, the license plate field is now in a pending status. So we're now going to fast forward. Park Houston has received the update request. They have reviewed it and confirmed that the vehicle registration address does match the resident property address, and they've approved the request. And typically, ordinarily, this would take a business day or two, but for our instructional purposes, we've already approved the request. So I'm going to refresh the screen here. And we now see that the new license plate assignment has been updated to this permit and that the effective time for this particular license plate is April 13th and it was updated at 11:10 a.m. So this permit has now been updated with a new license plate. So our second example will involve making a plate assignment to a visitor permit. So now visitor permits and service provider permits are annual permits, and they are transferable, meaning that license plates can be reassigned to the permit. However, only one license plate can be linked to a permit at any given time. So it's one license plate for one permit. So we see that this customer has two visitor permits. And we have a friend coming over for dinner this evening, and we want to update one of these permits with that individual's license plate. So I'm going to click on this permit right here. Now you can do the update before or as your friend is arriving to your residence, but so I don't forget, I'm going to go ahead and do this right now. So I'm going to populate the license plate of my buddy here. Now, there is an option to save the vehicle. So this can come in handy if this is going to be a frequent visitor to your residence, and it avoids you having to get the plate, write it down, memorize it. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And I'm going to call this Robert's car. And I'm going to click assign. So we now see that this permit has been assigned with plate 2929RR and that it is active as of March 20th, 2023. So when my friend rolls around to my residence, his vehicle will have parking rights upon arriving to my residence. So our third example involves the assignment of a day pass permit. Now, a day pass permit is valid for a 24-hour period. So once purchased, the customer has until the end of the permit year to activate and use the permit. So the permit actually becomes activated once a license plate and effective start date and time are populated on the permit. So we're going to choose this day pass permit here, and we're going to populate the vehicle information. So now I am expecting this visitor to arrive this evening around 6 p.m. So I am going to populate just to ensure that there's no issues, and in the off chance that this person arrives a little early, I am going to set the time for 5 p.m. Now, I could have made this assignment at the time that the individual actually arrived, but since it's fresh on my mind, I'm going to go ahead and do it now so I don't forget. So, like the visitor permit example, if I wanted to save this vehicle plate for future assignment, I can do that. But I'm going to review my information here. So, today at 5 o'clock, the 24-hour period for this particular permit will begin uh, once I click this assign button. So we see that the permit has now been updated with the license plate and that the effective time and date is April 13th at 5 p.m. this evening. And that's when the uh, parking permit privileges for this license plate will begin. So this permit is now updated and active. This concludes this instructional video on assigning license plates to residential parking permits.